Good afternoon, everyone. Please come forward, take a seat. Thank you so much for being here with us for this debate, in line with the previous discussion, but with a focus on decarbonization, the E in ESG. A few words of introduction. Gwenola Robert, you are the Chief Commercial Officer and After Sales for AERO, and you'll speak to us about the air industry. Frédéric POUGET, Group Maritime Director and Board Member at BRITTANY FERRIES. Amaury, BOLVIN, you are the co-founder and CEO of ZEPHYR and BOREE. And Guillaume, VIDIL, you are the CEO of MARFRET. Thank you to the four of you for being here with us. First question. On regulations, not the sexiest of topics, but a reality. We now we have the Fit for 55 Pact, which is multi-sectoral and includes the air and maritime industries with a number of targets for the air industry, 2% of renewable fuels by 2025, all the way to 70% by 2050, and in the maritime world, a gradual decrease in greenhouse gas emissions, etc. So a number of measures, but beyond Fit for 55 are projects and regulations by sector, which are in the pipeline. So a question to the four of you, starting with you, Gwenola. Do you think that these measures are enough and they're realistic? As a matter of fact, the reality of the air industry is, how shall I put this? The aviation sector has studied this net zero by 2050 agenda with the objective to reduce by 50% greenhouse gases by 2025, or at least by 2030. Compared with 2019. The aviation has entered into the Alliance for Zero-Emission Aviation, gathering 52 industrial players in the aviation industry. And together, since the month of December 2022, have worked on what needs to be changed in terms of regulations and also on the support measures to be taken sector by sector in order to take that transition forward. And what's really interesting here, but this is something I would imagine is happening as well in the maritime world, there is an interdependence between between all the players in the aviation industry. I'm here for a manufacturer that builds hybrid and electric planes, and if, for example, pilots are not trained to pilot these new planes, they will none of this will ever happen. So this alliance goes to show that we all need to be making progress at the same pace. The BOUGET event just wrapped up yesterday, and clearly the aviation industry is very motivated to go there to achieve all the objectives by 2030 and then by 2050, which will be mainly relevant for planes of 50 seats and above. Right, Frédéric, same question for you. Is all of this realistic? I would say so. We have to respond to certain societal and environmental obligations. So that destination is something we should accept. And we'll have to go there and step up our act. But our technology is ready, yes, and there are many of them. Are they mature? Answer is quite different, but we have the right capacities in terms of investment, from a private standpoint, from an investor standpoint, from a subsidies standpoint. So yes, we're going to go there. We'll be making progress. And should there be any difficulties, we'll be able to overcome those barriers because that's a mandatory obligation we need to comply with. Now, Amaury, do you think that this is enough? We think it's a good starting point. And as we said earlier, it is quite interesting to make sure that our investors and that all players can truly understand that the cost of easy fuel will be higher and higher. However, that cost will always be lower than decarbonated energy. So the EU has made a bold step in the right direction to further improve the attractiveness of our offering, but more needs to be done if we want an efficient and timely ecological transition. We'll need much more than that. This is not enough for the moment. The cost of climate inaction will be higher and higher the more we wait. It's a bit of a chicken and egg story. For as long as investors, well, as long as the financial world does not have a clear scenario where decarbonated energy will cost just as much as carbonated energy, the answer will not be clear. Would you agree with this? Not enough is being done. Well, our position at MARFRET is to always try and anticipate on regulations. For example, we have engaged in river massification for more than 10 years. So in the supply chain, there are many challenges to be tackled, such as door-to-door. And we have around 40,000 TEUs per year that we remove from the road. And at MARFRET, we want to position ourselves in a regional economy. We try to push our customers for more local sourcing with short distances at sea. And of course, there are important challenges with a number of legacy fleet. And so there's an opportunity ahead of us with the renewal of our fleet to provide solutions which will help us achieve a number of objectives by 2030 through quick wins on direct energy efficiency solutions with also hacked grids, and from 2030 perhaps we could have a certain number of disruptions which we cannot foresee for the moment, but at MARFRET this is the way we are taking. We are moving towards decarbonization.
Well, let's stay with you. This panel is interesting. We have different players, not in the same sector, not with the same level of maturity. But let's stay with you, Guillaume, VIDIL. You said we've gone down that road. There's a legacy, but MARFRET is based in Marseille, as the name said, 150 million euros in revenues. Your grandfather, well, your ancestor started it in 1851, but decarbonization was not easy. That's a turn you had to make. But what was the trigger? What did it start with? Well, it's true that my grandfather and my father only knew carbonized shipping. And so the industry really used all its energy in getting better efficiency on diesel engines. So they had to reverse engineer the process, as it were, with river massification in a way. And COVID was an electric shock for society. Thanks to the RORO fleet of the company, which is better compatible with sail assistance, it could start on its decarbonization pathway, and the challenge is immense. Fuel oil is the biggest expenditure for the company, and ahead of us, we have the challenge of a lifetime. Decarbonization will be a long and difficult path. Yes, you can explain what you're doing now to reduce your carbon footprint in terms of awareness raising with the team at every link in the chain. Is it a message that was easy to take on board because that has a direct impact on your employees' work to take all that on board? Did it happen naturally? Was COVID the trigger? Did that help? Did you have to educate a bit? Well, yes, absolutely. We did use this MARFRET project to raise awareness on weather routing and train the crew, and also the providers did not also switch to these new technologies. Naturally, the advantage is that MARFRET is that we have a large number of routes that we can't decarbonize with the same technology. We do Marseille to Algiers, but we have transatlantic or even transoceanic going to Papeete or Nouméa. So we can't find a solution with different fuels, or we're going to countries where the infrastructure will not allow us to source these products. So we're going to have to work on a mixture of solutions using sail assistance, maybe hydrogen solutions for the Seine River, HGVO with carbon capture over the Mediterranean. So we'll have to embrace a number of technologies simultaneously. Yes, quite a few projects on the horizon. Frédéric, POUGET, BRITTANY, FERRIES. You're a maritime company doing cargo and passenger transport, 2,500 employees, revenues around 450 million euros, 11 ships in the fleet. You've been around since the 70s. Same thing. What was your trigger event? Well, I'm saying that the best decarbonized energy is the one you don't consume. You may say it's easy to say that, but that's a reality. So the first principle is that energy is costly. And as you said, we're economic companies, and our first challenge is to maintain our business model. So by nature, if we're MARFRET or other ship owners, our crews have been trained about energy optimization always, but the tools that are available now, weather routing, technical improvement, ship speed variators, and data analysis. How do we collect the data to analyze the results? Because for a very long time, we did shipping the old way, navigating by the stars, thinking, well, I'm a good sailor, I'm going to do that. But we're now professionals, we're consumption experts, and so the trigger took place in the last 20 years. At Brittany Ferries, there was another trigger in 2008 when we looked at the future and thought things are going to happen. And it's thanks to our shareholders that are uncommon, because we were created by farm cooperative, and our farmers are still our shareholders and give us money to reinvest everything to the benefit of the company. And it's important because we're not here to pay a dividend to shareholders. And that's basically our Brittany Ferries model. So in 2008, we looked at things and we wanted to switch to newer energies that were available. That's how the first solutions were to treat sulfur with scrubbers. And on one of our latest ships, we've installed the latest generation of closed-loop scrubber without any emission to the sea, and we looked to LNG, but still as interim steps. What's important is to think that we're going up a staircase as there's no immediate solution. We need to go gradually without wasting time. So 2008, that was a revolution. We looked at new energy sources and we thought we'd go for LNG. Now we have our first 2 LNG boats operating, and so we could make a technological leap forward. And with LNG, you can also use storage solutions so that we are ready for future fuels. Now, LNG as such may be criticized. It can be criticized, but then we can make a leap forward. But our ships are ready to receive biofuels or e-fuels via the technical solutions implemented on board. ZEPHYR et BOREE, Amaury, BOLVIN, some are digital native. You were ESG native. You were created in 2018. 2017, you have 15 employees. You are pioneers in maritime sailing, modern sailing. And so was it obvious for you? But maybe the difficulty was in finding partners because there aren't that many players on that sector. Well, we started from scratch, so we didn't have the same constraints. No fleet you needed to transform or retrofit. But in our articles of association, we are a purpose company, so we're only marketing decarbonized shipping services that contribute to accelerating the environmental transition. So our clear positioning is that we only build sail-powered projects, and we are trying to have as much sail propulsion as possible. So we set ourselves constraints when we created the company, but that's also its purpose. And that's why it also has a role to play in the industry and in the sector, to be a pioneer and to provide orders to a value chain, a whole value chain that is being created in France, but also worldwide. There are vendors in quite a few countries. And so we think we have a pioneering role to bring the whole value chain behind us. So when regulations become tighter, and they will have to become tighter, just one figure to illustrate what I said, the UN expects a 10% increase in CO2 emissions from shipping in the next 5 years, in spite of regulations. So you can really see that we're not where we need to be in terms of figures. So we'll need to accelerate the development of these value chains. And so we're trying to push our projects to prepare the sector, but we can only really grow when fossil fuels cost as much as decarbonized energy. But concretely explain more. What are you doing? You design the boats and also operate them. These are hybrid ships. Where are you right now? We're a shipping company, a ship owner of sail-powered cargo ships. We have a first project developed with ZEPHYR, a company. It's a boat called Canopy. Oh, yes, I'm remiss here in my duties. We have an illustration. It's a 121-meter ro-ro with 4 wings. You can see that there, like plain wings, but vertically on the deck, so that you can reduce consumption by 20 to 30% on a given route to transport Ariane 6 launcher parts. It's an RFP we won in 2019, and it will start operating this afternoon. We got the sails up this summer, and we'll have the first route, the first operations in September. So it's a big accomplishment for us because we've been working on this first project for 7 years. And last year, we won a big RFP with a coalition of big shippers to develop a fleet of container carriers, mostly sail-powered. There, we want to save 50 to 60% on fuel consumption for the boat, thanks to wind energy. With the transatlantic route between Europe and the US that will start operating by 2025, late 25, early 26. This is what we're doing, so that you understand. It's both sail-powered and electric hybrid. Well, for the moment, it's sail and diesel. Our positioning is that sails, and there we'll agree with the other speakers, you can't have industrial-sized ships that are fully sail-powered, but you can considerably save on the energy you use on board ships, and that's the real benefit of the shipping industry. It can use synthetic fuels realistically if there are sails on the ships. Sails are a great tool to save on fuel, and to give you an order of magnitude now, if we wanted to convert the whole fleet from fossil fuels used for shipping to synthetic fuels would need roughly 60% of the global electricity production, renewables, nuclear, and biomass, everything that's decarbonized. A quick back of the napkin calculations show that it's impossible to do that in the horizon that we have. And so sails were used for millennia, and they really belong in shipping to decarbonize shipping. To illustrate what you're offering, is there an example on a given route of what your solutions and what your ships can save, how far they can reduce the carbon footprint and also save in terms of money? Well, for our transatlantic project, we'll reduce CO2 emissions by 50% compared to the market. Well, comparing to the rest of the market, massive decarbonization. And we have dual fuel engines. We believe in synthetic fuels. We're simply saying that they're not the only solution. So you can go up to 80% if you use synthetic methanol using all solutions. Very clear. Coming back to the RFP you were talking about, who are your big clients? Apart from Ariane Group for rockets, are there other clients in retail? What type of profiles? And what do they say when they approach you? Is it bad for their image? They has no choice? Or, well, we like it, but the shipping time shouldn't be longer. What are they telling you, frankly? Well, already, the image, it's a nice to have, but it's such a big commitment. Decarbonization requires a huge financial effort. So it's impossible to rationalize decisions simply based on image gains. Otherwise, what you do is simply greenwashing. If you have a true industrial vision and the commitments we ask from our clients are industrial in nature, they can't be used on a communications budget. So simply, they want to decarbonize. They also have their decarbonization roadmap. They know we need to start. They're ready to pay more to allow such a project to get off the ground and inspire the decarbonization of shipping. And their vision is also for regulations to move faster, but there should already be the first initiatives to prepare for the new industry. So first and foremost, they want to be part of a decarbonized project. Yes, it's a financial effort also. Well, those clients we have, they're very committed and very precious. Frédéric POUGET for BRITTANY Ferries, a reaction. Are sales a non-starter? Maybe not a non-starter. We did every studies we could around sales and various types of sales. Vertical ones, but also kites or turbo sales. We did every study, but our commercial and business model is based on a speed of around 20 knots. So if you look at the results, they can be counterproductive. So we've looked at sales, we've got everything in our drawers, but using our model, sales are not realistic. You were talking about what's realistically doable. It's not feasible for our boats. Well, you talked about LNG and hybrid boats to be delivered by 2025. Are there other actions that you are undertaking now? Well, now we've become aware that we are talking about a distant destination, but it's very close. Is 2050 too far? Well, it's far for me, given my age, but for the other generations, it's very close. What is important is that we move forward step by step. And now I've talked about everything we're doing with LNG and hull shapes. Given the levels of maintenance on our boats, well, for passenger ships, it's fortunate, but beyond that, all the equipment on a boat, for it to be efficient, it needs to be maintained in very good condition, and that requires a lot of investment. We're talking about colossal budgets. And so there's this culture of mechanical perfection, and we are constantly looking for ways to optimize all that. And regarding changes, well, we're going electric, as you said, and our next two boats for 2025, the Saint-Malo and Guillaume de Normandie, between Saint-Malo and the UK and Caen in the UK, They are the biggest boats in terms of electrical power. 11.5 megawatts of installed power. That's about 100 tons of batteries. And these boats can operate near boats, near harbors, and at berth, being fully zero emission. If we have this decarbonized electricity, we can make it on board with LNG, and that's greener, and there's a beneficial impact for the population, zero emissions in harbors. But we're also working a lot with regions to have the right investments, because the powers that I talked about require things that are unavailable right now in ports. We talked about big ports, and I liked the comment about let's not forget ports on the periphery, regional ports. We operate in Roscoff, Saint-Malo, Cherbourg, and Caen, and Le Havre. But Le Havre, that's really marginal for us. So we need support from the regions of Brittany and Normandy so that we can really step into the future. And also talking about hydrogen. I was about to ask, yes, what about hydrogen? Well, there's a lot of talk about hydrogen, but I had several opportunities to give the idea that I was reluctant about hydrogen. I'm not reluctant. To me, hydrogen, what is important is the molecule, the H, because with H, we can make other energy sources. So e-fuels, because right now on rivers, yes, hydrogen can be a reality, it can be mature, but for the powers and the amounts that we need on our boats, it's not a viable solution. It's not feasible. The amounts we need to store are too big. But turning it into methanol, into e-fuels, yes, that's a solution. So when I'm talking about technical solutions that we can have on our boats with wind power, we can have green hydrogen. Well, hydrogen needs to be green. You've heard about the amounts of power we need. So back of the napkin calculation, we need 220 wind turbines to build fully decarbonized energy for Brittany ferries. It's a bit complicated. So yes, there are the hybrid boats that are being built, retrofitting as well on existing ships rather than breaking everything down and rebuilding. You make adjustments on the boats, but it costs money. How much? Are you working on multi-year budgets for Brittany ferries, for the decarbonization of cargo and passenger transport? Any order of magnitude? That's really the crux here. Well, our decarbonization plan costs 650 million euros in investment for the next 5 boats, for new boats. But then you talked about retrofitting. For that, this is not something to be fully rejected. And with our Brittany Ferries teams, we are looking at that. When we build a boat, it's going to run for 30 to 40 years. So 24 plus 30 years, you see the horizon. Since we have a high-level maintenance and servicing culture, our boats, the hulls, because this is what floats, which is the basis of the ship's security, they are in perfect condition after 30 years, and then we can confirm that with the classification societies. And so we're thinking about new approaches so that we can have a boat that's 25 to 30 years old and see how much we would need to invest to go back for another 25-year cycle. So back of the napkin, we're talking about 60 to 100 million euros because we'll need to change the engines, the fuel storage systems, but why not? Why not? And what makes sense, we were talking about having industry in France and Europe. If we want to build these boats, we have to go to Asia. We have to almost, because there are few shipyards in Europe and they are almost booked. Those that can build ferries, they are booked by cruise boats. And so if we're looking for new technical solutions on retrofitting, we probably need to have partnerships with government authorities like ADEME so that we can have solutions for these retrofits closer to home. especially because shipbuilding, although the boats are very virtuous, then shipbuilding is quite polluting. You're right. By doing so, there's a natural carbon impact. You don't need to build the steel again, to produce the steel again. It's already here. And the deconstruction, we can have positive benefits on everything that we deconstruct. In Brest, we can do that. We can think about a lot of things. There are boats that we're reusing. So reconditioning is not just something for smartphones. Guillaume, VIDIL, you talked about it. Retrofitting is something you do on your boats, and you'll have a partnership with EcoWin. Are you equipping your boats with aluminium wings? What is it about? Well, yes, here we're talking about light retrofitting, because it's very difficult for us to start retrofitting, although the hulls are still in very good condition. Where we are lucky is that we developed a commercial route for various goods and rolling goods between Le Havre, Antwerp, and Guyana and the West Indies. And this route is eligible to sail assistance, given the very nature of this route. And so we are also lucky to have specific characteristics with clear decks, open decks, where we can use the system. It's captured our attention because it's very ingenious, and we can have plug-and-play use, and we can have iterations and testing. The first iterations were conclusive. We now have 2 units. We're looking at a third one. Containerization, you can see that the system is fairly lightweight. It's fairly small, but the system is making great progress with containerization. You can be very close to land, and so we're already on the 3rd generation of containers, and each unit is more efficient than the previous one. And we're now using this boat as a lab to prepare for the next build that I hope we can order soon. In terms of goals regarding decarbonization and carbon footprint reduction, what can that make possible? Well, this boat is 32 years old. The engine is also 32 years old on this boat. And so there are technical constraints that we cannot go beyond. But the sail assistance systems brings a 7% gain on the whole route, and we're in the 2nd year of testing. We still have a big room for improvement, and we can bring it to 10% on some rotations, and gradually we hope that by integrating all these ingredients in a new build, we could reach figures higher than 20%. Yes, of reduction, yes. Very well. Let's turn to you, Gwenola, to talk about aviation. The Paris Air Show ended yesterday. For AERO, you're also an ESG native company created by 3 former employees of Airbus and Dassault Systems. You know the challenges, 155 employees and an order book of about 100 aircraft, and now 345 after the air show. Good. So that was a good show. Could you explain, for those of us who don't know you, what type of aircraft you design, what specificities? Yes, gladly. AERO is an aircraft manufactured based in Toulouse on Francazal Airport. Some of the team are former employees of the big Toulouse aviation companies, Airbus, ATR, Safran, Thales. Toulouse is a big aviation center, and we're currently building a 2-seater for training. Mostly, it's a combustion engine aircraft, but it's only a first step. And the prototype we showed in Le Bourget is fully electric. Is that what you can see here? I'll say a few words about it in a minute. Well, this is a 2-seater for training. there's been a contraction of the training market. So the pilots, those who fly you to your holiday spot in the summer. So we had a first sale to Airbus Flight Academy and the Amaury Academy in the US, the biggest academy training pilots. And the idea with this aircraft is to start decarbonizing pilot training with 2 seats. Why? Because there's consensus in the whole aviation industry to say that the decarbonization scenarios will happen in steps. We'll start with 2-seaters with electricity, 2-seaters, 4-seaters, up to 19-seaters. There's a regulatory reason behind that, because ACS 23 for ships below 8.6 tons and below 19 seats. These regulations have already certified an electric aircraft, Elvis Electro, and so the regulation will be ready to certify aircrafts very shortly with electric and hydrogen. And then there's ACS 25 above 19 seats. It's a different story, and these scenarios will unfold at a later stage. So the strategy for AERO is to have this 2-seater certified, an electric 2-seater that will fly by the year end. We've tested the propulsion system. Now we'll tackle flight testing. And then what you can see here is a 19-seater. It's a hybrid electric. It's scheduled to be commissioned in 2028 with the first flight in 2026, a maiden flight in 26. And here I agree with ZEPHYR and BOREE. We're not able to have such an aircraft of such mass in full electric with only 2 passengers on board. It doesn't make sense really commercially. So the aim is to have hybridization over time with technological improvement for batteries. So with batteries and a turbo generator, you can have longer routes, more and more electric and less hybrid. So this 19-seater is entirely new. It was designed as a very good hybrid. So you need a plane that's as efficient as possible, as energy efficient as possible. So the aerodynamics, it was revealed on 12 May, the aerodynamics of the plane was designed to be as efficient as possible. And yes, indeed, we're talking about efficiency and yield almost in terms of savings. For hybrids, we can understand for full electric, but what carbon reduction are you expecting for this aircraft?
Well, we'll speak about the market later, but I would say here this is a plane. We want it to achieve a capacity of 900 nauticals. So just 900 nauticals, but it will depend on the setup chosen by the clients, but we can go up to 80% carbon less emitted on a regional route of 250 nauticals. That's considerable. Also, as we were preparing for this roundtable, you told me about facilitated maintenance for such electric planes. Yes, this would be the first full electric plane of its kind, which was designed to have absolutely no hydraulics at all, but that has an effect on maintenance, indeed. And maintenance is definitely a relevant topic for everyone attending here in this room. So you have a fuel savings, and the kilowatt hour price will be very interesting. But we're looking at minus 50% in terms of operating and maintenance costs compared with a comparable plane. A quick word on hydrogen. I'm not saying that we will never go there, but currently, in our opinion, hydrogen production is still challenging. And hydrogen production requires lots of electricity. But so perhaps we will go in that direction one day. But our first step is to decarbonize flights by 2030 when our first planes enter service to achieve that 50% goal. And for AERO, our strategy is to enter that market as early as possible. But there has already been a certified electric plane, and for us, electricity was the most interesting to decarbonize. Who are your clients as you just finished the Le Bourget fair? I would say we have three main client types. First of all, regional flights. That's a market that has somewhat disappeared in Europe for cost reasons. Clearly in Europe, you now have an aviation industry that will take you to a hub and then to your destination. So the impact of this was overall in Europe, half of the miles we do on flight are useless. As someone living in Toulouse, if I want to go to Monaco, I'll have to go through Paris. So you can imagine all of the waste that includes in terms of miles. And what we're discussing with our clients right now is to recreate a point-to-point market, secondary to secondary airport. In France, in the UK, in Germany, there are many airports coming to us, and they're saying that they'd be interested in recreating a regional network in Europe to allow everyone to save time. And having two rotations with a 19-seat plane, if the costs are low enough, then it would be completely relevant. We have solid business plans backing this up. That would be our first market, so point-to-point regional kind of market. And the entire ecosystem is on the way to recreating that network. In the US, it still exists. It's alive and kicking. But their main challenge is to find recent 19-seat planes. So that would be an interesting market. Second market would be private business jet. But that sector has image problems at the moment. They're looking to decarbonize. Regulations and taxation will probably increase. So clients come to us and they say, look, we know that we will not be able to decarbonize transatlantic flights really soon, but maybe regional routes of 150 to 300 nauticals would be on their agenda. And then third market would be freight. There's a bit of a new normal, as you might say, with Amazon promising to deliver everything and anything in just 24 hours at your doorstep. Land delivery is not really an option in all cases for that. And so we have certain clients coming to us. We can go up to 21 cubic meters, and that would be very interesting for them for their delivery needs. Okay, thank you so much for your very clear answers. Here's a question for all of you now. What's the main barrier to achieve the objectives which were set? Are these technological barriers, financial barriers, or even just a change in mindset? Gwenola, staying with you. What's the main barrier? Technology is here. Of course, we need to mature it. There is a lot of R&D and a lot of money poured into R&D. I would say the main barrier is scaling up. In France, in Europe, raising the right funds to allow those companies that have developed the technologies to scale things up is the main barrier. So basically the next step. And then you have to adapt regulations to decarbonized planes. Regulations speak about fuel only. Well, that will need to be changed and amended to include all energies. At Brittany Ferries, energy availability is the main point. Our 2 LNG ships serving France, the UK, and Spain. Well, for these 2, we have built our own LNG terminals in Bilbao and in Santander, right on the quay, where the ship is moored. Then you have ports, which act just like highway gas stations, but that leads to massive waiting times. And in Roscoff, we are the only operators in the port of Roscoff. So every time we need to invest in a port, there's a single operator who will take on the costs. So that's a complex model. And I would say availability of energy is the key point. Technical maturity will happen. It will be more or less difficult, challenging. We'll have to adapt ourselves. That doesn't really matter. But electricity and power really is on the agenda, but we'll need to make lots of it, and we'll need it to be decarbonized. But it is the best kind of energy from the well to consumption. If we have to take one kind of energy, reprocess it, retransport it, you're looking at one cost plus another cost. So let us electrify ports, of course. We can equip ships in any way that we can. Crossing the channel with our ships is already complicated enough. And also we'll need to be supported in terms of financing, because in the short run, you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of millions of euros in investment, and there's no way we can do it alone. Amaury, how about you? My answer will be rather more philosophical. I agree with everything that has been said, so I'll try to add something new here. I think we've won the battle of denial with regards to decarbonization. The good news is everyone knows we need to decarbonize, but now we're somewhat living in a denial of solutions and of the timing at hand. Everything that was just said needs to be real, but let us be aware that we'll not have enough time to do this at scale to decarbonize everything that needs decarbonization. So how can we keep on moving towards a world that's less energy intensive? In this year's IPCC report, it was clearly explained, but it's not really clear in people's minds. We really need to drastically reduce our energy consumption. This is scary, and that's an important point. Moreover, there's another denial at hand: time. We cannot afford that time. We need to act urgently, and regulation needs to be tough. If it is tough, then human beings can come up with all sorts of solutions. But it's just a matter of writing big checks. The economic world is what it is. Guillaume, VIDIL, at MARFRET, would you agree with that? The main barrier is the mindset, the energies that are available. We're progressing step by step in our decarbonization process. We live in a highly competitive market. We need to stay ahead of the game. We're faced with competitors which have adopted their own decarbonization transition, but they're moving at a different pace. We're specialized in the dom-tom territories, and in Guyana, in Papeete, in the Caribbean, there's a lack of infrastructure. For example, in our last step, we have a new building coming up in August with an A&P hacked grid system, and in the ports where they're going to operate, that system is not quite in place. So that hacked connection exists, but for infrastructure, that will be an issue depending on the site in question. All right, so quite in line with what the other speakers said. Thank you so much to the four of you for your insights.
Et nous allons marquer une petite pause.
We're going to have a quick break now. before we resume at 4:40. We'll see you here at 4:40. Thank you, everyone.